Ah, coffee, the lifeblood of early mornings and late-night cram sessions. But what if I told you the world's most expensive coffee has a production process so bizarre it's equal parts luxury and bathroom humour? Meet Kopi Luwak, the coffee that takes the phrase "passing through" to a whole new level. Yes, it's brewed from beans that have been digested. Yes, digested. By a civet, a cat-like creature with an expensive palate. Intrigued? Grossed out? Buckle up, because this is the fascinating and slightly icky story of Kopi Luwak. Section 1. A bean is born. Our story begins in the lush jungles of Indonesia in the 18th century, back when European colonial powers were treating the region like their personal spice rack. Dutch traders brought coffee plants to Java and Sumatra, envisioning a booming coffee empire. Local farmers were tasked with cultivating the beans, but there was one catch. They weren't allowed to consume the coffee themselves. Colonial rule was a buzzkill in more ways than one, but nature, as always, found a way to sneak past the rules. Enter the Asian palm civet, a nocturnal creature with a knack for munching on ripe coffee cherries. These little critters became unwitting baristas, eating the cherries, digesting the fruity pulp, and excreting the beans. Locals noticed that these beans, once cleaned, don't think about that part too hard, produced a smoother, less bitter coffee. Thus, Kopi Luwak, or civet coffee, was born. Section 2. The science of civet poop coffee. Let's get nerdy for a second. What makes Kopi Luwak special isn't just the unique, delivery system. When civets eat coffee cherries, their digestive enzymes break down proteins in the beans. These proteins are largely responsible for coffee's bitterness. The result? A cup of coffee that's smooth, mellow, and surprisingly sweet. But wait, how did someone figure this out? Imagine being the first person to say, "Hey, let's roast those beans that came out of the civet and make a drink." It's either a testament to human ingenuity or desperation. Either way, Kopi Luwak became a hidden gem among locals, until the colonial overlords caught wind of it. Section 3. The Civet's Coffee Club. Meet the bean connoisseurs. Let's pause for a moment to appreciate the real masterminds behind Kopi Luwak, the civets. These nocturnal cat-like creatures might not look like your typical coffee sommeliers, but don't let their scruffy exteriors fool you. They've got an eye, or rather a nose, for quality. Civets are incredibly discerning when it comes to their diet, especially coffee cherries. Unlike us, who might grab the first coffee pod within arm's reach on a groggy morning, civets carefully sniff out and select only the ripest, juiciest cherries for their midnight snacks. This preference isn't random. It's biology at work. Civets have an exceptional sense of smell, rivaling that of dogs, and their natural instincts guide them toward fruit that's perfectly mature. These ripe cherries have just the right balance of sweetness and acidity, making them an ideal choice, not only for the civets, but also for the coffee beans they produce. Think of civets as nature's quality control team. If it doesn't pass their sniff test, it's not making the cut. But here's the kicker. Civets don't just eat coffee cherries because they're delicious. They're also an important source of nutrients. The cherries provide energy from the sugary pulp, while the seed, the actual coffee bean, passes through their digestive system relatively intact. The enzymes in the civet's stomach then get to work, breaking down proteins and other compounds in the beans, which leads to the smoother, less bitter flavour that Kopi Luwak is famous for. Of course, this bean-to-bum process raises plenty of eyebrows and some gag reflexes, but from a biological perspective, it's a fascinating example of how nature's instincts align with human taste preferences. So, the next time you hear about Kopi Luwak, remember to raise your mug to the humble civet. After all, they're doing the hard work of picking the perfect beans, one cherry at a time. Section 4. From jungle secret to global phenomenon. In the 20th century, Kopi Luwak went from a local curiosity to an international status symbol. In the 1990s, the world started hearing about this bizarre coffee thanks to foodie adventurers and travel writers. And, of course, no story about luxurious oddities is complete without a cameo from Hollywood. Remember the bucket list. With Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson. Yep, Kopi Luwak had its big screen moment as the ultimate indulgence. But with fame comes controversy. As demand skyrocketed, so did the price, reaching as high as $100 per cup. That's right, a cup of coffee more expensive than your entire breakfast. But the growing popularity also raised ethical questions about animal welfare, as we'll get into shortly. Section 5. A luxury with a dark side. Here's the not-so-smooth part of Kopi Luwak's story. In its original form, the coffee was a sustainable, symbiotic relationship between civets and their natural environment. Wild civets ate the cherries, and humans harvested the beans they left behind. But as demand exploded, so did the temptation to cut corners. Some producers began keeping civets in cramped cages, feeding them an unnatural diet of only coffee cherries. This led to malnutrition and stress for the animals, turning what was once a quirky, eco-friendly coffee into an ethical nightmare. Today, many organizations advocate for drinking only wild, harvested Kopi Luwak, which ensures the civets live freely and the process remains humane. Section 6. The price of prestige. So, what makes people shell out hundreds of dollars for a cup of coffee? Part of it is the exclusivity. Kopi Luwak is labor-intensive and produced in limited quantities. There's also the allure of its story. A drink that feels like a treasure hunt, plucked from the jungle and processed by nature itself. And then there's the flavor. Critics are divided, with some praising its smoothness and others calling it overrated. But when you're sipping on something that costs more than a tank of gas, you're not just drinking coffee, you're drinking status. Section 7. Modern-day Kopi Luwak. Today, Kopi Luwak has expanded beyond Indonesia, with similar coffees being produced in countries like the Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand. These versions use local animals like the civet's Southeast Asian cousins to create similar processed beans. However, the rise of copycats and counterfeit Kopi Luwak means buyers have to be extra cautious. If you're dropping serious cash on civet coffee, you'll want to make sure it's the real deal. But there's good news for coffee lovers who find the whole concept a bit unsettling. Scientists have developed synthetic processes to mimic the enzymatic breakdown that occurs in a civet's digestive system. The result? Civet-free Kopi Luwak that tastes nearly identical, but skips the ethical and icky dilemmas. Section 8. Civet-free alternatives, innovation in a cup. But how do you replicate nature's enzymatic magic without involving an actual civet? It turns out that chemistry has the answer. Researchers have identified the specific enzymes in a civet's digestive system that break down proteins in coffee beans, reducing their bitterness and enhancing their smoothness. By mimicking this process in a lab setting, scientists can achieve the same flavor profile without involving a single furry friend. The process involves soaking coffee beans in enzyme-rich solutions that replicate the conditions of a civet's stomach. These enzymes break down proteins and other compounds in the beans, transforming their chemical structure, just like in the wild. After this treatment, the beans are carefully washed, roasted, and brewed. No civets, cages, or controversy required. Civet-free Kopi Luwak isn't just ethical, it's also more consistent. While wild harvested beans vary depending on the civet's diet and environment, lab-processed beans deliver a predictable flavour every time. Plus, they're more sustainable. Producing synthetic Kopi Luwak doesn't rely on wild civet populations or risk disrupting ecosystems. making it a win for coffee lovers and conservationists alike. Of course, not everyone is on board. Purists argue that the human-made version lacks the authenticity and story of traditional Kopi Luwak. After all, part of the coffee's allure is its wild, untamed origin. But for those who prioritise ethics over novelty, civet-free Kopi Luwak offers the perfect compromise. The same smooth, luxurious flavour without the moral dilemma. Section 9. Fun facts you can spill over coffee. Now for some trivia to impress your coffee-loving friends. Kopi Luwak isn't the only animal-processed coffee. In Thailand, there's black ivory coffee, made from beans digested by, you guessed it, elephants. Talk about a jumbo cup of joe. The word luwak refers to the civet in the Indonesian language. Kopi Luwak holds the dubious honour of being one of the most counterfeited luxury products in the world. Experts estimate that up to 80% of what's sold as Kopi Luwak might be fake. So, next time you're sipping on a plain old latte, consider yourself lucky. You're probably not being scammed. Section 10. Is it worth it? Let's face it. Most of us aren't splurging on a $300 bag of coffee beans. But the story of Kopi Luwak is a testament to humanity's love for chasing the extraordinary, even if it's a little messy. It's a reminder that food and drink aren't just sustenance. They're stories, traditions, and sometimes wild adventures. So, is Kopi Luwak worth it? That's up to your taste buds and your wallet. But whether you're a coffee snob or just someone who loves a good story, this bizarre brew has earned its place in the caffeinated Hall of Fame. Conclusion. And there you have it, the strange, luxurious, and slightly gross history of Kopi Luwak. The next time you sip on your morning coffee, take a moment to appreciate the fact that your beans didn't have to pass through a digestive tract first, unless of course you're feeling adventurous.